Shopper Alcohol Module. Compliant alcohol delivery on the Instacart platform. Agenda: complying with alcohol laws. How alcohol affects the body. Checking for valid ID. Refusal of service, undeliverable orders. Alcohol in the Shopper app. Knowledge check. Complying with alcohol laws. Shopper eligibility for alcohol deliveries. To deliver alcohol, shoppers must be at least 21 years old, have a valid driver's license, complete biennial training, maintain compliance with Instacart's policies, not be compensated based on whether an attempted delivery is completed. Shoppers must also complete an annual criminal background check and driving record check. Some requirements include: cannot have been convicted within the past 7 years of driving under the influence, cannot have been convicted at any time of a crime involving a sexual offense, fraud, property damage, theft, an act of violence, or an act of terror, cannot have a match on the National Sex Offender Registry. The legal age to purchase and consume alcohol in the United States is 21 years old. Customers under the age of 21 may not purchase or receive alcohol. Customers 21 or older may not purchase alcohol on behalf of someone under 21. Legal sales and delivery of alcohol. Deliveries may not be made in a dry county or municipality, outside of legal sale hours, to any institution of higher education, more than 75 miles away from the retailer, to a retail location. Criminal and civil liability. Instacart shoppers can face fines or jail time for illegal alcohol delivery. While a civil suit typically carries a monetary fine, a criminal action can result in jail time. Individuals can bring lawsuits against Instacart shoppers to recover damages for personal injury or property. The Alabama Code provides that it is unlawful to sell, deliver, furnish, or give away alcoholic beverages to any person under 21 years old. Avoiding fines and charges. Police and alcohol regulators may use sting operations to ensure that alcohol delivery is occurring in a safe and legally compliant manner. Officers may attempt to have alcohol delivered to a customer who is under the age of 21. In some states, minors may serve as decoys. In California, for example, Instacart's delivery service license number can be found in your Shopper app. Make this available for inspection upon request from any law enforcement officer. Always ask, "Are you 21?" and verify date of birth on ID before handing over alcohol to ensure you are not delivering to a minor. Always use the date of birth on the ID to confirm that the recipient is 21 or older. Checking ID after handing over alcohol will not cure an underage service violation. In addition to facing other legal consequences, shoppers who fail to comply with applicable law during the course of an alcohol delivery will lose access to the Instacart platform in accordance with the terms of their independent contractor agreement. Reach out to alcohol-compliance@instacart.com if you have been involved in a sting operation. You will receive a pay bump for discussing the details of the sting. Alcohol requests while shopping. Alcohol orders may only be requested by the customer through the standard ordering flow on the Instacart website or app. Shoppers may not accept special requests for alcohol received from a customer through the app's messaging function or through a text or phone call. How alcohol affects the body. Do not deliver alcohol to intoxicated customers. Alcohol may not be delivered to a customer who appears to be intoxicated. Signs of intoxication include bloodshot, glassy, or watery eyes, flushed face, slurred speech, slow response to questions, impaired balance, drowsiness or mental confusion, lack of focus or eye contact, odor of alcohol. Remember, form a reasonable belief that a person is intoxicated based on factors like the ones listed above. You must not discriminate against someone based solely on their race, gender, or disability status. Checking for valid ID. How to ask for ID. Always ask for identification before handing over alcohol to a customer, regardless of how old the customer looks. The following steps will help you comply with the law. Greet the customer. Introduce yourself as the customer's personal shopper. Assess for any signs of visible intoxication or behavior. Ask, "Are you 21 years old or older?" Ask to see the customer's ID. Holding the ID allows you to detect if it has been altered. Check for bubbles, varying thickness, or any ink signatures. Look for both the expiration date and the customer's birth date on the ID. Complete the appropriate steps to finalize the delivery in the Instacart Shopper app by scanning the ID and collecting the customer's signature. Only after completing all of these steps can you hand over the alcohol to the customer. Valid forms of ID. Instacart accepts the following forms of identification as proof of a customer's age for alcohol delivery: state ID card or driver's license, U.S. military ID, U.S. passport. U.S. passport cannot be accepted for orders where manual entry is disabled. Invalid forms of ID. These forms of identification cannot be accepted as proof of a customer's age for alcohol delivery. Non-government ID, school, work, etc. Credit card, printed copy, or digital ID. Please note, Instacart does not accept green cards, foreign passports, or expired IDs as valid forms of ID for alcohol orders. Checking authenticity of an ID. To accept a valid ID, make sure it belongs to the customer accepting the alcohol, doesn't belong to an underage person, is genuine, meaning not a forgery or novelty card. It is crucial that you visually inspect the ID. You must ensure that the recipient is at least 21 years old and that the ID belongs to the recipient accepting the order. Simply furnishing an ID is not enough to receive alcohol. The customer must be at least 21 and not appear visibly intoxicated. Valid ID cards will display date of birth, current expiration date. Expired IDs are not valid. Photo. Use this to help determine that the ID belongs to the customer. Physical description. IDs list features such as gender, height, weight, and eye color. Signature. For state ID cards, you can also check license number. All states have a license number on the ID. Make sure the correct number of digits are in place on that particular ID. Back of ID card. The back of the ID card may have information such as driving restrictions, organ donor information, barcodes, or magnetic strips. All IDs should be scanned through the app. IDs and the personal information that they contain are confidential information and must be protected accordingly. Using, retaining, or disclosing the information other than as instructed to perform the services is a violation of Instacart's policies as well as applicable laws. How to spot a fake ID. Valid identification should display the correct font and word spacing and not include words like genuine, souvenir, official, novelty, or authentic. If the lamination is split, thin, or has bubbles, it may have been tampered with. Some states make use of some raised text or embossed elements on valid IDs. Certain images, signatures, or text can be felt on the ID's surface. Valid identification will not include images of a lock or key. In some states, valid ID can also include holographic images. These 3D images change when the card is viewed at different angles. The edges of a valid ID should be smooth and uniform, whereas the edges of a fake ID may be rougher or coming apart. Severely damaged IDs should not be accepted. Most importantly, use your common sense. If a person clearly appears under 21 years old but presents an ID saying they are older, you can still refuse to deliver. Refusal of delivery and undeliverable alcohol orders. Your right to refuse delivery. If you think someone is underage or intoxicated, you always have the right to refuse delivery of alcohol. If you are suspicious that your customer is using a fake ID or is intoxicated, do not deliver alcohol products to them. If you suspect that the customer is accepting the delivery on behalf of someone else who is underage, you must refuse delivery. For example, if someone of legal age is present to accept delivery, but a party where minors are present is occurring, do not deliver alcohol to the customer. Alcohol orders are considered undeliverable if any circumstances indicate illegal conduct, overconsumption, or an otherwise unsafe environment, or if the recipient is under 21, appears intoxicated, fails to provide proof of ID, fails or refuses to sign for delivery, fails to complete the ID scanning process, declines to accept the delivery, is not home to accept the delivery. Undeliverable alcohol must be returned to the retailer of purchase. Failure to comply may result in the deactivation of your shopper account. How to refuse delivery. Politely inform the customer that you cannot deliver the alcohol. Refund the alcohol using the shopper app. Leave the rest of the delivery with the customer and take the alcohol back to your car. Notify CARE and return the alcohol to the retail location from which it was originally purchased. Should a potentially violent situation arise, get to a safe location, call the police, and then notify CARE. Reminder: at any point during this process, should you need assistance, call CARE. You will receive an additional payment for your return service. When returning undeliverable alcohol to a retailer, identify yourself as an Instacart shopper and present the paper receipt if you have it, or contact CARE to provide you with a copy of the electronic receipt. Undeliverable alcohol must be returned to the exact retail location from which it was purchased. It cannot be returned to another location of the same retailer. You will receive an email from a CARE agent asking for proof of return for record-keeping purposes. Send the CARE agent proof of the return, a picture of the return receipt, to receive the additional payment for fulfilling your obligation to return undeliverable alcohol. Contact CARE for assistance with any of these steps. What to do when no one is home. Alcohol cannot, under any circumstances, be left unattended at a customer's door. Leaving an alcohol order unattended will result in deactivation of your shopper account. Instead, follow the procedure for refunding the alcohol items and returning the alcohol to the store to receive a pay bump and be in compliance with this requirement. For orders with non-alcohol items, you may leave the non-alcohol items, but the alcohol items must be refunded and returned. Alcohol in the shopper app. Step 1. Shopping for alcohol items. Reminder: you may not honor special requests for alcohol received from a customer through the app's messaging function. If a retailer has not chosen to offer alcohol items through the Instacart platform, Instacart is not permitted to deliver alcohol items from that store. Items containing alcohol will always be clearly marked in the app. Locate the item in the store, then scan or mark as found as normal. Step 2. Making replacements. If an alcohol item selected by a customer is out of stock, it may only be replaced if the customer has pre-approved a specific replacement through the platform, or the app has suggested a replacement, which the customer then approves prior to checkout, or the shopper has suggested a replacement, which the customer approves through chat or SMS in writing. Customer approval of alcohol replacements is mandatory. If the customer has not approved alcohol replacements prior to checking out, message the customer for approval using the chat feature of the app. Refund the alcohol items if you do not receive approval from the customer prior to checkout. Step 3. Checking out. When you're done shopping, the shopper app will prompt you to complete checkout with a cashier. Cashiers have the right to request your ID at the time of checkout. It is recommended that you bring your valid, government-issued ID with you when completing orders containing alcohol. During checkout, show the cashier the customer age verification screen. A store employee must review the screen and acknowledge that it was reviewed. Shoppers may not complete this step on their own, as the store must be provided the opportunity to accept or reject all alcohol orders. Step 4. Check customer ID. During delivery, you must always verify that your customer is at least 21 before handing over an order with alcohol to the customer. After inspecting the customer's ID, scan the ID. If there are technical difficulties with the scan, try moving to an area with better lighting, turning the flash on, placing the ID on a surface, or try holding the phone further away or closer. Scanning the ID is mandatory. It is insufficient to check the ID but fail to scan. Or if scanning fails, manually enter the information into the app. Step 5. Completing delivery. After confirming the customer's date of birth and scanning the ID, collect the customer's signature for the order on your phone. This step is mandatory. Contact CARE if you need assistance completing this step. The customer's signature will be saved, and you can then mark the order as delivered to customer. Questions? Reach out to Instacart using the in-app chat feature. Thank you for completing the alcohol delivery module.